All right, welcome everyone. My name is Mick, founder of Mick's Got No Nuts, a company working on releasing a 100% nut-free protein bar made in a dedicated nut-free facility. I personally have a peanut and tree nut allergy, so I understand the struggles of navigating the nut-filled world. So my mission is to help people like me, like Ellen here, who we'll get into in a moment, really understand the trials and tribulations we've gone through and lessons we've learned to get where we are today. And so today, I very much welcome Ellen to the show. Ellen, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit? Where are you from?
Hey. Oh, see, I went right in.
No, go
I'm
ahead.
Ellen. I'm in my late 60s, and I was diagnosed with tree nuts allergy when I was 3 years old. So that's a long, long time that I've been dealing with this. Yeah. And I do a lot of campaigning for our community, our nut-free
Mhm.
community, as far as writing to companies and asking them and like you really should, it would be easy for you to just not put that one little nut in something and then you could, help us all. And I'm kind of an advocate and
Mhm.
I'm doing constant research and begging and pleading and getting upset.
I love that. And I do want to get to that sort of advocacy that you've exemplified in a little bit. But first, you kind of mind just telling me about your nut allergy? Is it peanuts, tree nuts, every nut on the face of the earth? And tell me the story of how you first discovered that you have a nut allergy.
All right, here goes. So I am allergic to tree nuts. I am not allergic to peanuts. I just
Okay.
had peanut butter sandwich for breakfast.
Okay.
When I was about 3 years old, my mom was making my grandma's recipe for pinwheel cookies, which is basically a very buttery cookie dough that you roll out, spread it with butter, cinnamon, sugar, and chopped walnuts. And I
Mm.
was, looking at my mommy baking, and I said, Mommy, can I taste that walnut? Can I taste that?
Mhm.
And she gave me like a tiny, tiny piece,
Mhm.
and I chewed it up. And within 2 or 3 minutes, I said, Mommy, I feel funny. I don't feel
Oh.
so good.
Oh.
And Mommy, my lip is fat.
Oh.
And so my lip got swollen, my mouth got swollen, my fingertips felt swollen. I told her, Mommy,
Oh.
my fingertips feel hard.
Oh.
And she immediately gave me some antihistamine and called the doctor. And he said, do not take your eyes off of her. Can she breathe? Is she,
Mm.
go through all of is she breathing okay? And all of that stuff. And my mom's like, yeah, we're watching her. And so he said, well, if anything happens, take her to the ER immediately if
Mm.
anything more happens. But the antihistamine made the symptoms go away maybe within an hour or two.
Mm.
And after that, it was complete and total avoidance of
Mhm.
all tree nuts. And that's what the doctor told us way back when. We're
Mhm.
talking about 1960.
Mhm.
And there wasn't the knowledge then than there
Yeah.
was now. So I never had the opportunity for food challenges or whatever OIT and all of that stuff. That was
Mhm.
never my opportunity. And when they took me to allergists all along the line, they just said, avoid all nuts. The
Mm.
words cross contamination were not even in anyone's vocabulary at that time. And so
Mm.
I actually, for most of my life, ate everything as long as I asked, does this have nuts? They said, no, okay.
Yeah.
And I never had a reaction.
Okay. Never.
So, yeah,
You've never have so since you were that toddler age, you've had no
yes,
reactions.
I've had one.
Oh, tell me about
Um,
that one.
okay, I was 22, so I went a
Oh.
long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um, there were times when I said, "Oh, I don't like this has a weird taste, Mom. I don't like I could tell if
Wow.
something had a nut or coconut, especially.
Oh.
Um, it would give me that taste. There's a certain
So
nut
is it the
flavor.
so is it the taste or is it the like do you get like a little itch in your throat and you stop immediately?
The taste comes before any reaction.
Okay, so you
There's
can
a
really quickly
very
identify that taste, that nutty
Yes, there
taste.
is
Oh.
a very, very specific icky nut flavor
Yeah.
that, yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, and I also
Yeah.
get it. Oh, sorry, my Ring doorbell. You have
No,
to
that's
edit that out. Um, I also get that same nutty aftertaste from celery and parsley.
really,
It's the
that's interesting.
aftertaste, but it doesn't, of course, I don't react to it. I did get
Hmm.
tested and it was a minor allergy.
Okay.
So, so back to your question.
Hmm. So tell me about that reaction you had. I think
Oh,
you said
yeah.
22.
Yes. So I was 22. I was a senior in college, about to grad. Well, I'd already graduated actually. It was after I'd graduated, but before I walked. And a friend of mine, we went dancing, a bunch of friends, and somebody spilled their Easter basket in my front seat, and they were eating stuff out of the basket from the seat. And I was on the way home and I said, "What is this?" And my friend said, "Oh, it's a malted milk ball."
Mm.
So on the way home, and I'm by myself, I popped this thing in my mouth and it was like, oh crap.
Oh, shoot.
It was not a malted milk ball, it was a Jordan almond.
Oh.
And I'm literally driving, it was 2 in the morning. I'm driving home, passing a hospital, wondering if I should take myself to the hospital, but I didn't
Oh.
know what anaphylaxis was,
Yeah.
didn't have a clue.
Hmm.
So I drove home 2 or 3 miles. I run in
Hmm.
screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, where's the triaminic?" Which was an antihistamine of that time. We're
Okay.
talking now 1980. And he gave me triaminic and also had me wash my mouth out with wine, believe it or not, because it was like an astringent. Called 911. By the time the paramedics got there, I was gasping for air.
No
It was
kidding.
absolutely terrifying.
Oh my goodness.
And they gave me epi, saved my life, took me to the hospital, and they gave me a bunch of other stuff. And that's the only time that I had a full blown anaphylactic event.
Oh my goodness.
In those, but
Okay.
I'll never forget it. In
Yeah.
those days, they did prescribe epi, but there was no such thing as an epinephrine auto injector like EpiPen or AviQ. It
Hmm.
was called an Anna kit, and it
Mm.
was a little red box that you opened up, and it had an alcohol wipe, a tourniquet, and an actual syringe
Hmm.
of epinephrine. The
Okay.
problem is it had to stay in the refrigerator at all times.
Not very accessible. Yeah.
So if I had been in trouble when I was out somewhere, it wouldn't have done anything for me. But I had become very careful by then.
Of course. How
Yeah.
long was it between when you had that candy to when you were in, would you say, full anaphylactic shock? How long was that process? I mean, how long was that timeline there?
From the time I ate it and I started to feel my cheeks swelling
Hmm.
inward to the time I got home and
Hmm.
was screaming to my dad, it was maybe 6 to 7 minutes.
God, see, it just happens so fast. It happens so fast.
It was immediate. Yeah.
Wow. Do you think it's an understatement? Because this sounds obviously extremely severe, and a lot of these cases are. Do you truly believe that without that epinephrine, things would turn out very differently, maybe
Of
a bit
course.
morbidly?
1000% I would have been dead.
Wow. Holy smokes. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have this
Yeah.
podcast with just people in general, that just we need to really broadcast the severity of this issue, because I know a lot of people who don't have nut allergies, these companies, like you're saying, they just don't understand. They don't
Yeah.
understand that one silly little peanut candy, or in your case tree nut candy, that could have been the end of you. That
I
legitimately
can
could have been the end.
I can illustrate that. One time someone had put some almond cookies, from a Chinese restaurant in the
Yeah.
teacher's lounge where I taught.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and it wouldn't hurt me if I didn't eat them or touch them,
Hmm.
but it meant that anyone touching and eating those cookies was then putting their little fingertips
Oh, almond
on
dust. Yeah.
the doorknobs and the faucet and the bathroom door.
Hmm.
So I wrote a little note saying, "Hey, friends, I'm allergic to nuts. So if you eat this, please wash your hands thoroughly afterwards."
Hmm.
And at the second recess, because I was teaching second or third grade at the time, So
Mm-hmm.
when the upper grade teachers come in, their recess is later. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the upper grade teachers came in and said, "Oh my God, what is the big deal about this anyway?" And she threw my note away. And someone else
Wow.
reported that to me.
Wow.
I've never forgiven that person.
No, that's
I
that's
still know her. She's because I'm involved with something at the school where I used to teach because I'm retired. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, I never forgave her, and I went to my principal, and I it was a whole thing, and I put
Mm-hmm.
a sign on my door saying this is a nut-free zone. I
Yep.
taught my kids how to read labels. My students at second
Yeah,
grade were reading labels.
that's
I mean,
awesome.
I made a big deal out of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Of course. I do want to kind of go back to when you were a kid, maybe that time between you were 3 and 22, where you're still relying on your parents somewhat. Do you have any
Mhm.
siblings real fast? Do you have any
I
siblings?
have one, and he's not allergic to anything.
Okay, lucky guy. Um, Tell me about the experience of growing up with a nut allergy and a sibling who didn't have a nut allergy. Was that a really an easy kind of time, or was there some challenge and maybe a lack of understanding within the family?
So again, nobody knew then, or at least told us about cross contamination.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I just went through life until that time in 1980 when I was 22. I went through life just saying, "Does it have nuts in it?" And no, no nuts. Or I'd read the label, doesn't have any
Mm-hmm.
nuts, and I would eat it. And somehow I just was really lucky
Mm-hmm.
because I ate hamburger buns in
Mm-hmm.
restaurants. I ate bread. I ate, rolls. I ate whatever. I just said, I just can't, I'm allergic to nuts. Please don't. Does this have nuts? But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know to
Yeah.
ask about
Yeah.
things more deeply than I do now. And
Yeah.
nothing happened. I was just really, really lucky
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah. Was your brother allowed to have nut snacks in the house?
We didn't ever have nuts in the house, except, and this is weird, once in a while, my dad would buy chestnuts
Okay.
and roast them, and I ate them. And I'm probably not allergic to them, or at least I wasn't at the time because I
Oh,
ate them and they never bothered me.
interesting. I
Yeah,
wonder if there's some sort of biological classification that separates chestnuts from a typical tree nut. I'm not sure.
it
That's an
is
odd
on
one.
the list of tree nuts, though.
It
I
is. It is a really
recently,
okay. That's new to me.
I
That's very
refreshed
interesting.
my memory just recently on that. Yeah, I looked at a
That's
list.
that's super interesting.
Yeah,
So you've emphasized multiple times that knowledge obviously was slim on nut allergies.
very.
When do you think year-wise that kind of started to shift and you felt more and more people were becoming aware of this issue?
Well,
Or still,
at
I mean,
first,
obviously it's not perfect, but when do you feel like,
for a long, long time, I felt very alone
yeah,
and very, to be honest, unloved, not by my family and friends, but unloved by the world
yeah,
of food.
hmm,
And I just, it was so frustrating. I don't have to do this anymore. And I think the quantum shift was maybe about 10 years ago, I
hmm,
would say, where people started to be more aware. But
hmm,
before that, if I'd go into a restaurant, I'm talking about in my 30s, 40s, 50s,
hmm,
I would say, I am allergic to tree nuts. And of
hmm.
course, nobody even knew what a tree nut was. Oh, you're allergic to peanuts? No, peanuts. And I mean, now I have nuts grow on trees, peanuts grow in the ground. Peanuts are legumes.
Yeah.
I am not allergic to peanuts. I am allergic to tree nuts, almonds, walnuts, cashews, pecans, macadamia nuts, and so on.
Hmm.
Oh, I said, so this is how sure you need to be when you bring me my food. This is what will happen. If I have even a crumb of something with nut, I will go into anaphylactic shock. I will be very sick at the table. I will have to call 911, and your entire restaurant will be a madhouse, and all of your people who are eating here will have a disturbing bad meal because I am having a reaction. Do you want
You
No,
know?
don't.
No.
And then
No.
maybe in the last 10 years, when I started to give that speech, they said, oh, yes, we have a protocol. We know I'm going to write this down for the kitchen.
Mm,
And I know that there's no nuts in this and this. And I always, by the way, I don't know if you do this, Mick, but I always, in a restaurant, always have a choice A, a choice B, and a choice C from
mm.
the menu before the server comes to take my order
Oh,
because of
just
that.
in case option
Yeah,
A may have. Okay,
yeah.
I like that. Yeah. That's that's a good question because I know when I go out to eat, especially in places, even if it's like a restaurant or not a restaurant, let's just say, I go over to, Sally's house for dinner and, they're not super aware on nut allergies. I, at least I know, I will be very careful and take like a small, small bite of food. I don't want to be rude, of course, so I'll take a small bite, wait a minute, and if I don't feel anything, I will then eat the meal. Do you approach it the same way on food that's
Oh,
not
heck no.
regulated?
There
Okay,
is
so
no way.
how do you regulate that
If
then?
someone has invited me over to their house to eat, I explain everything to them.
Mm,
And I'll say, so I have these food allergies. I'm allergic to nuts. And she'll say, well, I'm going to make chocolate chip cookies. And
hmm
I said, okay, um, what kind of flour are you using? Oh, I'm using
hmm
gold medal. Okay, that's okay. Oh, I'm using Bob's Red Mill. Please don't use Bob's Red Mill. Please use either Gold Medal or King Arthur and only in the 5-pound paper bags. They're
mm.
like, what? Then I have to go through all of that. I said,
Yeah.
what else are you planning on making? Well, I'm going to get some pasta from this restaurant and then I'm going to make this. Okay, well, I'll call that restaurant and find out if that's okay for me.
Mm,
And, could you let me bring dessert instead? Or
hmm
this is what I can eat. This is
hmm
what I can't eat. And or can I see the package or,
Yeah.
whatever. But,
Yeah.
and one thing I will tell you right now, I would never eat anything to be polite, not ever.
Really? Okay.
Not
I
just because of my allergies, because I'm kind of picky.
I think it's safe to say that your allergy is probably more severe than mine. Can you be in, let's just say someone's eating a nut next to you. So you're not touching it, but you're like smelling it and it's like right there. Are you
No,
going to
I'm
be
fine.
affected? Okay. Okay.
My husband, what we do if we're like at a wedding or something and he's going to go get a dessert or a piece of wedding cake,
hmm
he gives me one last kiss and then he
A
eats what he
sayonara
wants. And
kiss.
then
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are not kissing again for the rest of the night until he's brushed his teeth and scrubbed his
Yeah.
lips and
Yeah.
used mouthwash and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. Yeah. One last kiss. I love that.
Well, and one
Um,
time he
mhm.
gave me the kiss of death because he forgot that he had eaten a mango popsicle. This is in the morning before work. I don't know another person, my husband's weird, who would eat a popsicle first thing in the morning. I'm just grossed out by that. It doesn't sound good. But he forgot and he kissed me. And on the
Mhm,
way to work, I didn't have a full-blown anaphylactic response,
mhm,
but I definitely felt something. And I called my principal and said, oh, this is happening. So I'm going to come to work, but I'm going to
mhm,
take some Benadryl. You may or may not have to get a substitute.
mhm.
But for about a year, we joked about that he gave me the kiss of death.
That's hilarious. So obviously your husband doesn't have allergies. I think you might have mentioned before you're the only person in your family who has these nut allergies, correct? Is there anybody within your maybe friend bubble that also has nut allergies, or do you really are the only person in your life with nut allergies?
Yes. So I do have a friend,
Okay.
Joanne. I've known her for 36
We
years.
love Joanne.
She is allergic to tree nuts, but she will eat something that says made in a factory or may
Okay.
have cross contamination. I won't.
Yeah.
But here's the weirdest thing about that. So we go out to lunch. Well, we're both allergic to tree nuts. Really? But not only that, we're both also allergic to ibuprofen.
Are you really? What an
She
odd,
actually had
what
a
an odd combo.
full-on anaphylactic attack and had to go to the hospital and use her epi and go to the hospital. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling weird after taking it before bed.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I've never
That
heard of
was
an ibuprofen allergy. Is that common? I don't want to get too sidetracked, but that's a new one to me. I've never heard
Well,
that
I'm
before.
I'm thinking that ibuprofen in some way is somehow connected to tree nuts, and my doctors don't know. But all I know is that my friend and I are both allergic to both, and that's kind of weird.
That is funny. That is really
Yeah.
funny. Wow. So, you and Joanne against the world, it sounds like. Yeah. So, this is a curious question too. So and you have kids, you said, correct?
I have one child,
You have one child. So,
one son. Yeah.
was there any concern with him growing up with your nut allergies that he may have a nut allergy?
Sure, I worried about it, but it never happened. He's not
Never
allergic
happened.
to anything.
Okay.
I think one time he ate some watermelon and his mouth itched, and I don't think he's ever eaten it since.
Okay.
But
But nut
that's
allergies,
about it.
nothing. Nothing.
And he's goes to eat anywhere, whatever. He doesn't like, no, he doesn't have food allergies. Mm-mm.
Okay.
And my dad didn't, and my mom didn't, and my husband doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
it's
the
so
only pain
interesting.
in the butt in
Yeah,
our
and that's the
family.
same with me and my family. I'm the only person. I'm the only person. So that's super interesting. So have you ever tried to like treat your nut allergy? I don't know if there's a ton of success in the community of curing a nut allergy, but I've seen symptoms improve. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Couple years ago, I asked my wonderful beloved allergist retired, and the
Mm,
woman they hired to take his place. I did ask her, like, what about those challenges and
mm-hmm,
different things, and she said that they're for children, that we don't
mm,
nobody does that for adults. And
mm.
she said, and here's the question. Even if you knew that you were no longer allergic to nuts, would you want to eat them? I said, oh my God, no. I
No,
would just like if knew that I was no longer allergic, I would just feel freer to eat just normal things, but I could never eat nuts. There's no way I could eat nuts.
yeah.
I don't,
Have
so I don't think that's any of those therapies.
mhm,
And then I have a new allergist and he told me the same thing. Not for my age. They don't do
yeah.
it.
Interesting. And that makes sense because I recently did a podcast interview with two parents and they had a 19-year-old son. I think you might have seen it.
I
And
did.
they mentioned that they've been trying to challenge it a little bit with a little bit of success, but like not a ton.
Yeah.
But even then, like he has developed the habit of avoiding nuts altogether, so he doesn't really even need them um,
Yeah.
because he's just so used to he developed life without them, you know.
It would just be the most delightful thing to walk into any bakery and just have like a cookie.
Yeah.
Not a cookie with nuts,
Hmm.
just a cookie, just a sugar cookie,
Hmm. Yeah.
whatever.
The risk is too high for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you talked about in the beginning, where you've reached out to companies, you've advocated for nut allergies. Can you expand on that journey a little bit? Because it definitely sounds like you're spokesperson number one.
Nah, I don't know. I'm I'm not shy. So I have called a lot of companies and asked about their practices, and they'll say, well, we don't put nuts in any of our foods, and we don't use any ingredients that even have cross contamination, but we share a kitchen with, and there's nuts that the other people who use this kitchen make. And my response is, could you not go the extra mile and find another kitchen space?
Hmm.
I mean, everything else is in place.
Hmm.
Why would you not take this to that final level? There are other kitchens. Find another kitchen. And I've said that probably 50 times to different companies.
Hmm.
And, it's always that same thing like, well, the kitchen we use is not free.
Hmm.
I'm like, that's just rotten. And, you know, the local deli that I go to, it's a deli and bakery. in here in Southern California. They have a lot of things with nuts and a lot of things that don't have nuts. And when I was younger, I ate their cookies. I ate their eclairs. I never had a reaction, but now I cannot. I just cannot do it. I just can't. But what really made me so angry is that even though they had, I don't know, 2 or 3 bread slicers,
Mhm.
they make some breads with nuts and they would just use whichever slicer. When how easy could it have been to say,
Mhm.
if you're
Yep.
slicing this bread with nuts, only use this
Yeah.
slicer.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean,
Maybe easy. Yeah.
stupid things like that.
Mhm.
I've written a lot of companies and, or emailed or talked to them, and a lot of them have said, we would really like to make it completely nut free, but we're kind of stuck here. We don't have the ability to do it a different way.
Yep. Yep.
There's a bakery that's maybe an hour from me that someone recommended is nut free, and I wrote them recently because they don't answer their phone, which I don't understand. But anyway, they said we have no nuts in our bakery, but we are not certified nut free, certified, not certified. We are not certified nut free. So take your
Mhm.
chances. And I'm like, what does that mean? So there's a dilemma.
Yep.
Do I go to this place knowing that they use absolutely zero nuts? And I tried to get clarification on, well, do you use a nut-free flour and do you use nut-free chocolate? And they just didn't really give me the time of day. All
Yeah.
they would tell me is, we're not certified nut-free and we have no plans to do so. Well, come on, people. Seriously?
I know. I know. And that's been a little bit of a challenge as I build Mick's Got No Nuts, is that there's not a ton of facilities and manufacturers that are that certified nut free because they have a
Yeah,
brand that also includes nuts, so they can't do it, you know.
yeah.
How many times do you see a protein bar on the shelf? I don't know how often, maybe you probably
Seldom.
don't, because they may contain nuts, right? um and you see a nice chocolate chip bar and all of a sudden you look at the back and it says may contain, because they also make a peanut butter bar right next to it on the shelf, and so
Yeah.
they can't rent out another facility. So it's almost like all branding because they want to expand their product base.
And speaking of the peanut thing, here's a fun little sidebar. I am not allergic to peanuts,
I know
but
you said that.
but if I would eat something with peanuts or peanut butter somewhere, how do I know that they're not cross-contaminated with
Correct.
tree nuts peanuts?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're
So
like
then
a
I can't eat the peanuts either,
yeah.
which
You're like allergic by association. You know,
yeah,
like you
so
know they're going to be
frustrating.
around. Yeah.
There is you wouldn't want this because you can't eat peanuts, but there is one source of tree nut free factory peanuts that I buy.
Would you share, or is that
Of
a
course,
hidden
America's Best Nuts.
America's
It's
best
in
nuts? Interesting.
North or South Carolina.
Interesting.
America's Best Nuts. And the owner's name is Sandy, and she's amazing. Yeah.
So they're the people who process peanuts, but not tree nuts. Correct.
Tree nut free factory peanuts only.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And
and
what
they're
I've
really good.
and what I've learned on this journey too, because I don't have this sensitivity that I'm about to say, that a lot of people with peanut and tree nut allergies have sensitivities to pea, which I guess makes sense because they're a
Yeah,
legume and peanuts are a legume. But
right.
I eat peas all the time. Um,
You're very lucky.
yeah, I am. And you
Mm,
don't have any sensitivity to that either. But I know that's
mm.
extremely common. And it's important to me to also omit pea because that's probably the most frequently asked question I get is it going to contain pea protein? And so many
Right.
people say it. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. I'm going to lose most of my audience if I do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you feel like you've had much success when writing to these companies and advocating for us nut-free enthusiasts?
No.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
But but
But
I pride myself in at least making them aware.
you know what? That's half the battle sometimes, you know?
And maybe someday
Hmm. Hope
that's where I go with that.
hopefully
Yeah.
maybe one day you'll be a spokesperson for Mexicano Nuts. Um, but And this has been such a fascinating conversation. And I want to kind of get your perspective as, because you said you were a teacher, is that correct?
I'm a retired elementary school
A
teacher.
retired elementary
Mhm.
school. How did you, and I know you mentioned it very briefly, but do you mind kind of going into it a bit more of how you kind of handled life as a teacher, knowing that nuts could be everywhere, right? I know that person took down your note, but what kind of things did you actually bring to school? Like what lunches did you typically bring? What protein snacks did you bring to school? I mean, I'm sure you had your
Yeah.
plethora of
Well,
options, but or maybe not.
obviously, I packed my own lunches
Of course,
always.
of course.
The school lunches, no,
Yeah,
just no.
yeah.
I ate a corn dog once, I think, but that was about it. I brought my lunches, I brought my snacks. I did not eat anything anybody brought without speaking to them.
Yep.
And certain things were less of a worry, like we would have breakfasts and someone would bring like a casserole that had hash browns and sour cream and cheese and stuff. Well, I'm not worried about that,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know. Or I would ask the person, there's a lot of social eating stuff in the elementary school teachers lounge, lots
Yeah.
of luncheons,
Yeah.
depending on where it was. Like if it was Mexican food, I'm good. Like I've never had a problem with any Mexican restaurants. I almost always feel very safe. If I'm going somewhere for the first time, I ask. But anyway, so at school, here's my story that's a very interesting thing. I told my kids about my allergies. When you teach elementary school, they bring you presents, right?
Hmm.
For holidays, Valentine's Day, whatever, teacher appreciation.
Yeah.
So they would bring me things that I couldn't eat.
Hmm.
And so I started teaching my second and third and fourth graders. I started
Hmm.
teaching them how to read labels and what this means and what that means and what tree nuts are and what peanuts are, and a little science lesson there.
Hmm.
And I felt so sorry for them because they would be out with their mom shopping for something for me, and the mom would be buying something that had nuts in it. And the kid would say, Mom, Mrs. Hoffman is allergic to nuts. She can't eat this. No, 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 it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then that's what I would get. And what the worst part was the kids saying, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hoffman. I tried to tell my mom, but she wouldn't listen to me. And I felt bad for the kids
Yeah.
because they wanted to give me something that I could have. And the
Hmm.
parents were so ignorant about food allergies and they wouldn't even listen to their
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
So that was heartbreaking for me
Hey,
and
props
for
to the
the kids.
kids. Props for the kids though for trying. You did a good job of.
Yeah, they really tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so let me ask you a question. So, what would you tell people who maybe just discovered they got a nut allergy? What would you say? This might be a loaded question, but what
It's
would you
hard.
tell them? Yeah.
Well, because I'm an avoid all person,
Hmm.
like some people, how their doctors are telling them now, if you're allergic to pistachios and cashews, but not almonds, keep eating the almonds, keep eating what you're not allergic to. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with an avoid all.
Yeah.
So I would say there are never too many questions to ask. There is never too much concern. You
Hmm.
cannot take this more seriously or too seriously. I'm not saying it right. You cannot take this any more seriously than every single thing. You have to be 100% vigilant every single day with everything that gets put in your mouth,
Yep.
unless you're at home where you know your foods are safe.
Yep.
Do not feel embarrassed. Do not feel like you're being impolite. Do not put yourself in danger. And the other thing, of course, is do not ever leave home to go without your EpiPen. Ever,
Yep.
ever, ever, ever.
Yep. Yep.
There's just no such thing as being too careful. And if you feel like a pain in the behind, that's okay. Because guess what? It's your life.
Yeah. The alternative is something pretty disappointing, right?
I do not believe in sugarcoating. Like if I say I'm allergic to nuts, I am very specific. I'm very assertive about it.
Hmm.
I don't go, well, I'm kind of allergic to nut. I don't do that. That's just not okay.
Hmm.
I am hard-nosed, assertive, beyond careful, and if in doubt, don't.
Yeah,
If I didn't bake it, I don't eat it.
that's right. That's right. And I love that, you shouldn't feel embarrassed by it because the
Should not.
alternative is bad.
Yeah.
Um, okay, you mentioned bake. Now I know that you have a little hobby because
Yep.
you bake your own bread, right?
Yep.
How did that
So,
start? And tell me about that.
okay. So who doesn't love bread, right?
Love bread.
So when I heard about bread machines in like the early 90s, I was like, oh, bread machine. Are you kidding? Homemade bread? And despite the fact that my mom was a major baker and my grandma and my aunt come from a family of bakers, none of them baked bread that I know of. My mom never did. So when I heard about this bread machine thing, I was like, oh my God. So my parents bought me a bread machine. And this is actually about the time I got divorced from my first husband and um, moved out into a townhouse nearby. And my son, came with me. So I started baking bread, and it was just a basic, I think, white bread. And that was for our school sandwiches every day. He never had anything but homemade bread for his sandwiches all through elementary school. And that's what I took for my lunches as well. And I baked bread probably twice a week.
Hmm.
And then eventually that bread machine died and I didn't replace it for a while. I got remarried. I we bought a house, the house that I'm in right now,
Hmm.
and I got really frustrated at my choices of bread that were safe.
Yeah.
And I started looking at the labels and seeing not only that it might have nuts in it, but so many chemicals. And I
Mm.
was like, yuck. So I decided to get another bread machine.
Hmm.
And this time I learned more, made better things. And by then, Facebook came around
Mm. Hmm.
shortly thereafter. And I joined a bunch of bread machine Facebook groups that
Yeah.
taught me a whole bunch of stuff. And I started baking better and better because I would have fails and not know why. Now I know why. And so when I retired, did a bunch of traveling the first year, the second year, pandemic hit.
Yep.
And my mom, unfortunately, got diagnosed with cancer
Sorry.
and didn't make it through 2020. And I had time on my hands at home to experiment and I started creating my own recipes. No nuts. I
Of
found out
course.
which flours were safe, which seeds were safe,
Hmm.
to put on my breads or whatever. And I made one video that I put on some bread machine Facebook groups about how to properly measure because a lot of people don't know how to properly measure, especially flour.
Hmm.
And someone said, Ellen, this was so good. You should have a YouTube channel. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm 60 whatever years old. I'm no YouTube influencer. They go, no, really, your video was so good. So I made
Hmm.
another video and people started saying, you really need to start a YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
one day when I'm sitting in my car waiting for my dad who was at the dentist, I had driven him and it was pandemic, so I couldn't go in.
Hmm.
I create a YouTube account and I just want to see, well, how do I do this? What should I do?
Yeah.
And later on that night, I uploaded both of my videos. I got a subscriber. And then I got
All
another
right. All
subscriber.
right.
And then I'm like, oh my God. Well, now I have I have 12,500 subscribers and I don't
Unbelievable.
make money from it. I monetized for like 3 months, made tiny bit of money. It wasn't worth it. It made me neurotic
Mm.
because, oh, I got to create more content. I got to keep up my view. No, turned it off.
Hmm.
So if anybody went to my videos, there's no ads. I
Love
don't
that.
take sponsorships. I get people writing all the time wanting me to use their products and say that I like use and like them. And I won't do it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I don't I don't
Good
do
for
any
you.
of that. So I now have something like 143 videos on my YouTube channel. I make one sometime. I did two in 1 week about a week ago, but then I might go for 3 weeks and not put any, and but I only make my own recipes.
Mm-hmm. Of
I have recipes that are they're all tree nut free. I have
course.
one peanut butter bread recipe, but they're not, you're not like if you watched my peanut butter bread recipe, it's just through the YouTube, you're not going to get sick from it.
Yeah.
But I don't, most of my recipes just are ingredients that are nut free.
Yeah.
And I have dairy free ones, I have with dairy ones, I have gluten free recipes.
Mm-hmm.
I cracked the code for the best gluten free bread that anyone could ever have,
Oh yeah.
according to my friends who eat gluten free. They're like over the moon at my bread because I even make gluten free cinnamon rolls, which
Whoa.
that's really hard. And they're so, so good. And you can't, and there's a distinctive, have you ever eaten something gluten free? There's a very distinctive grainy type flavor.
Yes. Yes.
My breads don't taste like that. My gluten
No
free breads
kidding.
don't have that grainy flavor.
No kidding. Are you
So
you're kind of a bread baking celebrity, it
I
sounds
am a
like.
bread baking celebrity. If anyone goes to YouTube and literally searches on Ellen
Mm-hmm.
and the words bread machine, I pop right up.
That's awesome. What's your YouTube channel name? Do you
I have to, it's so long, I have to come up with it. Can we put a link in the description for
I
people?
will put a link in the description
Yeah,
with your YouTube
it's
channel. Everyone
bread
go check out
machine.
Alan's bread channel.
It's bread machine and baking videos with Ellen Hoffman. But if you just
That's
YouTube baking
yeah.
and bread machine and Ellen Hoffman, you're going to find me really fast. And I also have a website. So if you went on Google and did Ellen and bread machine, you'd also find me super, super easy. And I don't make money from anything. I don't want you
Mhm.
guys watching this to think it's any kind of a plug because all I want to do is help people make bread. I don't make any money.
Just for the love of the bake.
Yep.
Just for the
It's
love
for
of
the love
baking.
of the bake.
Well, I absolutely love that. And um God, 12 I can't get over that number. So you're a celebrity in the bread baking world. I love that.
Eh, not really.
Well, Ellen, I'm thinking we might wrap this up pretty soon, but I want to give you one final chance. If you have any thoughts, any more comments about just your nut allergy in general, any questions that maybe you have for me or anything you want to get off your chest that I haven't prompted you yet.
Well, I know I've bugged you about what I want in a protein bar because they all have chocolate. And I mean, I love chocolate. I am a chocolate eater, but I would like some kind of a protein source that is more like food. If I'm hungry for a meal,
Mm,
I want it. I wish there was something that tasted more like food
mm.
than a candy bar. That would be, my big wish.
What would be an example of I'm having a tough time kind of picturing what you're looking for.
Something savory instead of something
Mm,
sweet.
okay.
I mean, I know that you probably don't want to use sesame because that's a top allergen, but sesame, um, Parmesan cheese,
Oh, interesting.
like these are my thinking garlic, something oniony and
Mm,
garlicky and
hmm
Parmesan cheesy. I couldn't tell you what form it would take. I couldn't,
hmm
I can't, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if anyone has made it to the end of the podcast, I do have aspirations to be expand beyond the protein bar, but the protein bar is first on the list. Because that's something that
Yeah.
personally I would like, and I think it's an easy opportunity to dive into that market. But I do foresee Mick's Got No Nuts being the nut-free brand, hopefully in 5, 10, 15 years, where everyone can get snacks from us because we are the nut-free brand. So that's long-term goals.
I have big hopes for you, kiddo.
Me too. Well, any last thoughts, Ellen, before we sign off?
I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
Hey, people, advocate for yourself. Don't ever let your guard down. And I mean, never. Do not go to lunch with friends and say, oh, what the heck, I'll eat that too. Do not eat that wedding cake at a friend's wedding. Do not eat the bread on the table. Bring your own. That's why I make my own bread. If I am in the mood for a hamburger and my husband and I are going to go someplace where I can get a burger, I have hamburger buns made and in the freezer. I
Mm,
grab a hamburger bun, put it in my purse, a little Ziploc baggie, and I order it without the bun and then I have my own bun.
mm,
So that's
interesting.
why making your own bread is a really good thing. By the way, in a bread machine, guys, you literally put the ingredients into a bread pan, lock it in, press start, and 4 hours later, you have a loaf of bread. It's that easy.
Yeah.
And I can show you how on my YouTube channel. I have a whole beginner's playlist.
That's a whole one. How many videos do you think are in that playlist?
I don't know, like 12. I'm not sure.
Really? That's fun.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Well, Ellen, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And if anyone watching has any questions for Ellen, I'm sure she would be happy to respond to your questions in the comments
absolutely. I'll be
because
checking.
she'll be checking. And
Yeah,
she's retired. She's been through the nut allergy hell, so she's been through it. But Ellen, thank you again so much for talking with me today. And maybe one day we'll talk again.
sounds delightful.
All right, Ellen. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye, Mick.